James Thornton had always been a man defined by control, success, and an unyielding will to conquer any obstacle that stood in his way. From humble beginnings, he rose through sheer determination and business acumen to become a self-made millionaire, building a vast empire in finance and technology. His life was a testament to hard work, strategic vision, and relentless pursuit of excellence. But no amount of money or power could prepare him for the devastation he now faced as he sat silently beside the hospital bed of his only son, Ethan. Ethan had been the light of James's life, a boy full of boundless energy, curious eyes, and a smile that could brighten the darkest of days. Just weeks ago, Ethan had been riding his bicycle down their quiet suburban street, laughing with the careless joy of youth, when a speeding car came out of nowhere, slamming into him with devastating force. The aftermath was a blur of sirens, frantic phone calls, and a flurry of emergency medical personnel who worked tirelessly to save the boy's life. But despite the best efforts of the doctors, the injuries were severe and irreversible. Ethan was paralyzed from the waist down. As James sat in the sterile, cold hospital room, the constant beeping of monitors, the antiseptic smell, and the whisper of nurses exchanging quiet condolences surrounded him, suffocating him with an unbearable weight of helplessness. He watched his son lie still, eyes wide but distant, his little body trapped in a silent prison of broken nerves and shattered dreams. The doctor's words echoed in James's ears, grim and unyielding. Prepare for a lifetime of wheelchair care. Every plan James had made for his son's future seemed to collapse like a house of cards, leaving behind only a crushing void of uncertainty and sorrow. In those long, sleepless nights, James wrestled with despair, anger, and guilt, questioning every decision he had ever made as a father and a man. The world he had fought so hard to build felt fragile and meaningless in the face of his son's suffering. One particularly bleak evening, after countless hours spent at the hospital, James left the room and stepped into the cool night air, seeking a moment of solace away from the sterile walls that held his son captive. As he walked aimlessly through the quiet city streets, his mind was a storm of dark thoughts and shattered hopes. That's when he saw her, a little girl, no older than 10, sitting alone near a busy street corner. She was wrapped in tattered clothes that barely protected her from the chill, her face streaked with dirt and grime, but her eyes were unlike any James had ever seen, calm, steady, and remarkably clear, shining with a strange kind of wisdom and serenity that seemed impossible for someone so young and vulnerable. She was a beggar, begging for spare change from passers-by who mostly ignored her, their faces reflecting indifference or disdain. But something about her gaze caught James off guard, stirring a flicker of curiosity and something deeper, a whisper of hope amid the darkness that had consumed him. Despite the gulf of difference between their worlds, James, with his tailored suit and expensive watch, and the girl with her bare feet and torn dress, there was an unspoken connection, a silent recognition of shared pain and resilience. Tentatively, James approached her, drawn by an inexplicable pull, and when she looked up, her eyes met his with a quiet intensity. "Sir," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper but steady and sure, "I can make your son walk again." The words hung in the air, surreal and impossible, slicing through James's numbness like a sudden jolt. He stared at the girl, searching her face for any sign of deceit or madness, but all he found was sincerity and an unwavering conviction. Was this a cruel joke, a desperate child's fantasy, or was there something extraordinary hidden beneath? Her ragged appearance, a secret, a gift, a miracle waiting to be uncovered. For the first time in weeks, something stirred within James's heart, a fragile, flickering flame of hope. That night, as he returned to Ethan's bedside, the beggar girl's promise echoed in his mind, challenging the grim certainty that had dominated his thoughts. Could faith and courage overcome the brutal reality of science and medicine? Could the impossible become real? As James sat holding his son's hand, he vowed to explore every avenue to seek out this mysterious child's help and to fight for Ethan's future, no matter the cost. Little did he know, this chance encounter would mark the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he believed about power, healing, and the true meaning of miracles. When the beggar girl first approached James with her quiet, confident declaration, "Sir, I can make your son walk again." He was struck by a wave of disbelief so overwhelming it nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. His mind raced, trying to dismiss her words as the desperate fantasy of a child hardened by life's cruelties, but beneath his skepticism was a desperate hope he hadn't dared to feel in weeks. The girl's earnest expression, unyielding and calm, unsettled him more than any harsh truth the doctors had delivered. She told him about her grandmother, an old woman from a remote village steeped in ancient healing traditions, where faith, herbal medicine, and rituals were woven together to mend the broken and the lost. This knowledge had been passed down to her in secret, a legacy of wisdom and power concealed from the skeptical world beyond their village borders. James, a man of reason and evidence, found himself wrestling between the cold science of modern medicine and the warm promise this girl carried in her simple words. His desperation to see his son walk again outweighed his doubt, and despite the raised eyebrows and cautious whispers from the hospital staff, he resolved to bring her into Ethan's sterile world. On the day Lila stepped into the hospital room, a strange energy shifted the air. Her presence seemed to breathe life into the heavy atmosphere of pain and despair that had clung to the room like a suffocating fog. She approached Ethan gently, her touch light and tender, her voice soft but filled with a steady strength that coaxed a flicker of response from the boy. Nurses and doctors watched from the doorway, skepticism etched on their faces, yet even they could not deny the subtle changes that began to ripple through the room, an unspoken hope taking root in the midst of uncertainty. Lila's methods were unconventional. She spoke prayers in a language no one recognized, applied poultices of herbs with care, and encouraged Ethan to move even the smallest muscle, celebrating every twitch and flutter with infectious joy. Each day, James observed in amazement as Ethan responded, his eyes brightening with a light he hadn't seen since the accident, his body slowly awakening from its paralysis. The skeptical medical staff started to soften, and whispers of miracle began to circulate quietly among the hospital corridors. Yet, alongside this burgeoning hope, came challenges, voices of doubt and ridicule from those unwilling to believe in anything beyond what science could prove. Rival families, threatened by the miraculous progress, sought to discredit Lila, labeling her a charlatan. But James stood firm, driven by a father's love and a newfound respect for the beggar girl, who had entered their lives with nothing but faith and an ancient promise. As the weeks passed, the hospital became a stage for a battle between old prejudices and new possibilities, but through it all Ethan's determination and Lila's unwavering belief forged a path toward healing. For James, this chapter of their lives became not just a fight for his son's mobility, but a profound journey into the unknown, where faith, hope, and love intertwined to challenge the boundaries of what was considered possible. The miraculous began not just in Ethan's healing body, but in the transformation of a father's heart, opening him to a world beyond wealth and logic, a world where miracles could indeed come from the most unlikely places. Over the following weeks, the quiet hospital room transformed into a space charged with an energy that no one could fully explain, a tension between hope and skepticism, science and faith, despair and the miraculous. Lila, the beggar girl whose simple clothes and humble demeanor had initially sparked curiosity mixed with disbelief, became a constant presence by Ethan's side, a patient and gentle guide through a journey that many had said was impossible. James, watching with a mixture of awe and cautious hope, witnessed the profound transformation that began with the tiniest signs of movement, at first barely perceptible twitches in Ethan's paralyzed legs, almost as if the boy's body was waking from a deep, unyielding sleep. Lila encouraged Ethan with quiet whispers of ancient chants, her voice steady and soothing, weaving words that seemed to carry a power beyond mere sound, as if calling forth a force older than the sterile walls around them. She taught Ethan to trust his own body again, to attempt small movements, to push past pain and fear, all the while offering comfort and unwavering belief in his ability to heal. The medical staff, initially wary and skeptical, watched with growing astonishment as days turned into weeks, and those faint twitches developed into more controlled motions, fingers flexing, toes curling, legs responding to commands that just weeks before seemed beyond reach. Tears of joy often glistened in James's eyes as he witnessed these small victories, each one a defiant triumph over the grim prognosis that had once chained his son to a wheelchair and a life of limitation. Word of Ethan's progress began to spread beyond the hospital walls, drawing curious visitors, reporters, and even medical experts eager to witness the phenomenon. The story of the ragged beggar girl who had ignited a spark of life in a paralyzed boy captured imaginations and stirred debates. For James, the experience was transformative. Not only was his son reclaiming his body, but the miracle unfolding before him challenged everything he had believed about power, wealth, and the limits of human potential. Yet as the light of hope grew brighter, so too did the shadows of doubt and opposition. The scientific community, bound by evidence and protocols, demanded proof and explanations, some dismissing Lila's gifts as trickery or coincidence. Rival families and business adversaries, sensing vulnerability in James's newfound faith in the miraculous, launched campaigns to discredit the girl and tarnish the story. The hospital administration faced pressure to remove Lila, citing unorthodox methods and lack of credentials, while skeptical doctors cautioned James against relying on anything outside modern medicine. James found himself caught in a painful crossfire, torn between protecting his son's fragile recovery and defending the beggar girl who had become a beacon of hope and healing. He was forced to confront his own prejudices and fears, to question the boundaries between science and spirituality, reason and faith. The media frenzy brought unwanted attention and invasive scrutiny, yet James stood resolute, refusing to abandon Lila or the miraculous progress Ethan had made. The experience deepened James's understanding of healing, not merely physical restoration, but the power of belief, love, and courage to challenge the impossible. Ethan's slow but steady recovery became a testament to resilience and the unbreakable bond between father and son, nurtured by the humble girl whose presence had changed their lives forever. In this chapter of struggle and triumph, the miracle unfolded not only in Ethan's first steps, but in James's transformation. From a man of steel and skepticism to one of faith and fierce protection for the unexpected gifts that defied logic. Hand restored hope. The journey was far from over, but the promise of healing witnessed in the quiet strength of a little beggar girl and the courage of a boy reclaiming his life had set in motion a story that would inspire and challenge the world beyond the hospital walls. The crescendo of their journey arrived quietly, but with an intensity that shook the very foundation of James's world and those around him. The day Ethan, after months of unwavering effort, whispered encouragement from Lila and took his first, unassisted steps down the hospital corridor, each movement tentative but growing stronger. A fragile dance of hope made flesh, witnessed by a crowd that had once doubted but now stood breathless, eyes wide and tears falling freely as the impossible unfolded before them. The doctors who had insisted on the finality of paralysis found themselves cheering alongside nurses, family members, and the very man who had spent so long tethered to skepticism. James, whose heart burst with a mixture of pride, disbelief, and a profound gratitude that transcended words. For this was not just a medical miracle, but a testament to the power of faith, resilience, and the courage to believe in the unseen. In that corridor, as Ethan's steps became surer, the weight of years of pain and despair seemed to lift, replaced by a lightness that transformed the sterile hospital walls into a sanctuary of new beginnings, where science and spirit met in harmony. The once beggar girl, Lila, who had entered their lives as a whisper of hope from the margins of society, was now celebrated as the embodiment of compassion and ancient wisdom, her humility and quiet strength breaking through the hardened armor of prejudice and doubt that had surrounded them. James, a millionaire accustomed to control and certainty, found himself humbled and transformed, recognizing that true wealth lay not in money or status, but in the intangible gifts of faith, kindness, and the courage to embrace the extraordinary. With tears in his eyes and a heart forever changed, James pledged to support Lila's mission, ensuring that her healing touch and message of hope would reach beyond the confines of their hospital, touching countless others who, like Ethan, needed a chance to believe again. Together, the trio, father, son, and healer, stepped out into a sunlit park where the golden rays of the afternoon bathed them in warmth and promise, a scene symbolic of rebirth and new possibilities. The millionaire who had learned the profound lessons of humility and belief, walking alongside his son who now dared to dream of a future, unbound by limitations. And Lila, the girl from the streets, whose extraordinary gift had illuminated their lives and sparked a movement of hope. This chapter closed not merely with physical healing, but with the transformation of souls, a story that would inspire generations to come, reminding us all that miracles often come wrapped in the most unexpected forms, that true strength is found in kindness, and that sometimes the richest treasure is the faith we hold in each other and the courage to embrace the unknown.